My husband's a director at a well-known company. It's something you, a high school graduate, could never achieve in your lifetime. During a reception at a fancy restaurant, I unexpectedly ran into a classmate who insulted me for being out of place in such an establishment. She suddenly started boasting about her husband, being ignorant of who I really am. She repeatedly mocked me, calling me a loser or a failure. "Well then, I guess he's getting fired tomorrow," I said. "What?" she responded. As I was running out of patience, I turned to her and said this. I ignored her and left the place while she stood in bewilderment. Consequently, she fell from grace, ending up in a tragic state. My name is Michael Anderson, 46 years old. I run an apparel company. I took over the company at 35, succeeding the previous president, and became the CEO. Introduced by an acquaintance, I started working at my current job right after graduating high school, and my hard work was recognized by the president. Even now, I work hard every day with my employees for the company's growth. At 25, the president introduced me to a woman whom he considered a perfect match for me. I married this woman, Emily, who was an employee at the same company and 3 years younger than me. We were blessed with a child soon after marriage, and now I'm the father of a daughter who's a university student. Emily resigned from her job when she found out she was pregnant and became a full-time homemaker, focusing on housework and childcare. When I became the CEO, she returned to work as my secretary. Now, with Emily's help, I'm working hard as the CEO. I was living a busy yet fulfilling life, but a certain event would soon lead me to face a major dilemma. I was raised by my single mom. My mom managed to send me to high school, but pursuing college was out of reach due to financial issues, so I decided to work instead. In my sophomore year of high school, my mom fell and was hospitalized. Early in the morning, I worked on newspaper delivery. Additionally, I worked at a restaurant and a bar to earn a living. However, I couldn't afford to go on the school trip no matter how hard I worked. Hearing this, my classmate Sarah Johnson started mocking me. "I heard you can't even manage to afford the school trip. Isn't that just typical of a poor single-parent family like yours? Your mom's a total failure, unable to even shell out a few $100." Her words led her friends to join in, making me the butt of their jokes. I was furious about them mocking my mom, but realized arguing was pointless. I just endured in silence. Sarah was beautiful and seemed to be the daughter of a company's president, a central figure in our class. Most of the class followed her lead, so I was ridiculed by almost everyone. But even so, there was one person I could call a true friend, Sam Jackson. Sam, who talked to me when I was alone in class and even showed concern for my mom's health, was a great guy. We became friends in our sophomore year and still go out for drinks as adults. Incidentally, I got my current job at the company thanks to an introduction from Sam. If you're a friend of Sam's, you're more than welcome. Thanks to Sam, I owe a lot to where I am today. I truly can't thank him enough. One day, as I was thinking about inviting Sam for a drink, Emily, holding her smartphone, came from the adjacent secretarial office into my CEO office. "Sorry? Can I leave early today?" Thinking she might be feeling unwell, I asked, "What was wrong?" "It's not me. It's Lena. She's having trouble again. She says she's too scared to move," Emily said, looking worried. I immediately told her to go and saw her off. Even after Emily left, I couldn't settle down. The truth is, I've been troubled by something for about a week now. It's about my daughter Lena's stalker. About a month ago, while the three of us were having dinner without Lena, she came home from her part-time job, her hair disheveled and face tear-streaked. When I asked what happened, she said in a small voice, "A customer tried to force me into his car." Naturally, Lena had turned him down, but he persisted. Eventually, he waited for her until she finished her duty at the restaurant, attempting to coax her into his car. Moreover, he was a man in his 50s, older than me. Naturally, Lena had turned him down, but he persisted. Eventually, he waited for her until she finished her duty at the restaurant, attempting to coax her into his car. Hearing this, both my wife and I were horrified. We immediately made her quit her job and started picking her up from university. However, that didn't put an end to it. The stalking continued, and he started showing up at her university and places where she went with friends. Feeling that I couldn't let this man go unpunished, I discussed the situation with Lena and reported it to the police. However, they informed us that they couldn't take any action since no actual harm had been done. All right then, I'll handle it myself. However, the man seemed to be very cautious and never showed up when I was watching. In short, it ended up being a waste of time. I could pick up Lena whenever she asked, but beyond that, there was nothing else I could do for her. As a parent, I felt utterly helpless. One day, while pondering what to do, the stalker approached Lena again. Lena managed to escape quickly, but out of fear, she shut herself in her room. "I'm just so scared," she said. Hearing her anguished voice, both Emily and I felt frustrated at our inability to do anything. Realizing that this couldn't continue, I asked Sam a favor for Lena's sake. After work, I immediately called Sam to a cafe near the office. What's the rush? You know I'm pretty busy too, though maybe not as much as you," Sam said. "I know that, but you're the only one I can ask." I explained to Sam that Lena was frightened by the stalker and the police were of no help. "You're my last hope, Sam. Can you please find out who this stalker it is?" I pleaded with Sam. After graduating from college, Sam had set up his PI agency. Hoping that a professional could uncover the stalker's identity, I turned to Sam. Initially joking, Sam's expression changed when he heard about Lena's situation. "If it's for Lena, I've got to do it. Leave it to me. I'll find out everything as quickly as possible." Relieved by Sam's reassuring words, I explained to him about Lena's university and the nearest station. Just then, a familiar voice said, "Isn't that Sam and the poor guy?" Turning around, there stood my classmate, Sarah Johnson. Though she had aged, her beauty was unmistakable, so I recognized her instantly but pretended not to. "Miss Johnson." "Hey, don't call me by my maiden name. I'm now Sarah Pendragon. It's an uncommon family name, isn't it?" "Pendragon? That's quite uncommon. I think I only know one person with it," I responded casually. Sarah looked back and forth between me and Sam and sneered, "You two still make such a bland duo. You fit better in a diner than this stylish cafe. It's out of place for you. Why don't you move to another shop?" She mocked us. Even after so many years, her fundamental character hadn't changed, I thought. "We're having an important conversation. If you have no business with us, could you please leave?" Sam blared sharply at Sarah, who turned red with anger and left, returning to a young man who seemed to be her companion. After that, Sam and I discussed Lena's situation in detail before leaving the cafe. A week later, Sam told me he had something to discuss, so we met again at the cafe. "I want you to look at this." The moment I saw the document Sam handed me, I was so shocked my eyes nearly popped out. "I can't believe such a coincidence," I said. "I was surprised too," Sam replied. "Not just me, but everyone else seemed surprised as well. But with this much evidence, we can act. Let's get moving." Just as I was about to say something, Sam said, "Can you give me just 2 or 3 more days?" He wanted me to wait before taking action. Thinking of Lena, I honestly wanted to end this as soon as possible. Even now, Lena is struggling to leave the house, and I've been forcing her to go to university just to catch the perpetrator. But there might be a reason why Sam is asking this. With that thought, I reluctantly nodded in agreement. The next day, after learning the shocking truth, I went to a high-end restaurant for a business dinner. As I stood up to go to the restroom, there she was again, Sarah Johnson, exclaiming, "What is a poor guy like you doing in a place like this?" Even more out of place than at the cafe. While thinking how unlucky I was to run into her, I told her I was here for work. To which she replied, "For work? That's a lie. There's no way a high school grad from the bottom can have a decent job. You must be working in some insignificant factory, right?" She mocked me without even knowing my job, just making assumptions. "Actually, I happen to be a CEO," I retorted, angered by her condescension. "A high school graduate as a CEO. Even if it's true, it must be some tiny company with 1 or 2 employees." "That's not a real company," she scoffed. Still, Sarah didn't stop mocking me. Growing increasingly annoyed, I was about to dismiss her when she suddenly started boasting. "My husband is a director at a well-known company. That's something you, a high school graduate, could never achieve in your lifetime." She proudly spoke of her husband, the sales director at a well-known apparel brand. Comparing her husband to me, she kept calling me a loser and a failure, continuously mocking me. I was running out of patience. Well then, I guess he's getting fired tomorrow, I said. After that, I left a bewildered Sarah Johnson behind and walked away. After finishing the dinner successfully, I returned home. I arrived home before 9 o'clock, but the kids had already gone to their rooms, leaving only Emily in the living room. Welcome back. You must be tired after being out so late. Did the dinner go well? Emily's caring words prompted me to ask about Lena. Her face clouded over in an instant. It seems it didn't work out. She cried today, wanting to quit university, she said. I see. Don't worry, her agony will all end tomorrow, I assured her. My words made Emily look puzzled. I then told her, actually, and proceeded to share my plan with her. I hadn't told Emily about consulting Sam about Lena, so she was surprised. I was wondering why you, usually so kind, were forcing Lena to go to school. But now I understand. I wish you had told me. I could have helped, she said, relieved to hear my plan. Emily agreed. I hadn't disclosed it to her until now as I wanted to keep things confidential. Actually, I have a favor to ask you, Emily. As soon as I made the request, Emily agreed without hesitation. Leave it to me. I have a wide network. I'll arrange everything today, she said. After saying that, she left for the bedroom with her smartphone. As for me, I prepared for tomorrow, took a bath, and rested. The next day, I found myself engrossed in urgent work at the secretarial office. I had a specific purpose for being there. As I made good progress, the CEO's office started getting a bit noisy. The CEO will be back soon. Please wait a little longer, I heard Emily's voice, but then a man's voice interjected. No need to worry. I was surprised when you called yesterday to think the CEO himself has something to discuss with me and my wife. The day before, I had asked Emily to invite the sales director and his wife. I asked Emily, my secretary, to contact them. Considering Emily's wide network of contacts, she quickly succeeded in inviting them here today. When Emily left the room to prepare, the sales director and his wife were left alone in the CEO's office. Listening in, I heard the wife excitedly speculating. It might be about a promotion. Called in as a couple, maybe it's for a vice president position. If he becomes a VP, the retirement package would be something to look forward to, she said. The sales director seemed pleased as well, both unaware of what was about to happen. Chatting animatedly, I nearly laughed at their carefree conversation but composed myself and opened the door to the CEO's office. Mr. CEO, how are you? The sales director greeted. Hello there, Sarah, I said. She had stood up following her husband and froze the moment she saw my face. She must have never imagined a classmate she ridiculed for being a high school graduate would turn out to be her husband's boss. As Sarah's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, I said, nice to see you again since yesterday. The unsuspecting sales director then asked her if she knew me. Nope. Well, stammering, Sarah struggled to answer. We're high school classmates, I interjected, and the sales director's face brightened. But I must say, my memories with her are nothing but unpleasant. My sarcastic remark instantly turned the atmosphere in the room. I see, the sales director said, and it felt like hell until Emily returned with the tea. After being mocked by his wife the other day, I declared that I would fire her husband, so I called them in today. Reacting quickly to my words, the sales director began to scold Sarah. Did you really say that? And to mock the CEO? What were you thinking? But I didn't expect a high school graduate to be a CEO, Sarah tried to justify. Even when the sales director told her to apologize, she showed no sign of doing so. I deeply apologize for my wife's grave disrespect, but to be fired over just this incident, could you please reconsider? Desperate to keep his position, the sales director repeatedly apologized, but Sarah seemed indifferent to his apologies. It appears your wife is not at all remorseful, I pointed out to the sales director. Sarah worded angrily, why should a high school dropout like you be a CEO? It's your fault for not saying it, and firing over something like this is wrongful dismissal. The sales director hardly tried to silence her, but it was too late. I decided to explain to Sarah how I became the CEO. I joined this company right after graduating high school, and I'm the CEO where Sarah's husband is the sales director. Moreover, my best friend Sam is the nephew of the former president, and their fathers are brothers. Initially, I was hired because I was the friend of the president's nephew. Later, at the age of 30, I took over the company from the former president and became the CEO. There were doubts about whether I could lead 9,000 employees, but the sense of responsibility was greater. After 5 years of training, I took the CEO position. That's how I became the CEO. Sarah responded, I had no idea about such a background, but to be fired for something like this. Although Sarah's face turned pale, she still didn't utter a word of apology. It's not just for this reason that you're being fired. I'll explain the proper reasons now. After saying that, I called out to Emily to bring in a certain person from the secretarial office. As Emily signaled, Sam burst into the CEO's office with great energy. Sarah was even more surprised at Sam's entrance, and the sales director, Mr. Pendragon, looked confused. Mr. Pendragon, you're fully aware of what's going on? I asked, but he just shook his head. When I glanced at Sam, he placed several documents and a photo on the table. The moment Mr. Pendragon saw the photo, his face turned deathly pale. Only Sarah, sitting beside him, seemed unable to figure out the conversation. Actually, this girl is my daughter. She's been a victim of stalking for a while, and I hired my pet friend to investigate. You're the stalker, aren't you? I sharply eyed Mr. Pendragon, who started trembling and nodded slightly. You? That's a lie, right? Maybe she missiled you or something. Sarah, in disbelief, accused Lena as if she were at fault. Due to my extreme anger, I was about to lose control and utter inappropriate words. Instead, I let Sam explain the investigation results. When Sam handed me the final report, I recognized the stalker as our employee. Of course, I can recognize someone in the position of the director in the company. What I know about him is that he is a diligent and serious man at the office. That's why the report was very shocking. After Sam finished explaining to Sarah, I addressed Mr. Pendragon. Now your dismissal is final and executory due to valid reasons. It's not just that the matter involves my daughter. The company cannot employ anyone who engages in such an immoral act. Do you understand, Mr. Pendragon? Without a word to say, Mr. Pendragon just nodded quietly. Of course, this matter with my daughter is a serious crime. Appropriate actions will be taken, so please understand. Thinking the incident would be reported to the police, he pleaded, please, anything but that. But recalling Lena's tear-streaked face, I retorted emotionally, do you have any idea of the depth of fear you have brought to my daughter? If you have even the slightest understanding, accept your punishment. At this time, Mr. Pendragon hung his head in defeat. I thought it was all over, but then Sarah suddenly said to her husband, I'm divorcing a stalker like you. Get out of here right now. Just as she said this, Sarah approached me with a sly smile. I'm sorry about everything before, but in return, I'll be your wife. Aren't you happy to have a beautiful woman like me? Incredibly, she started making advances toward me right in front of her husband. Disgusted by Sarah's behavior, I informed her that I was already married with children. Unfazed, she began to talk nonsensically about being a second wife. As I wondered what to do, Sam suddenly burst out laughing. What's so funny? Do you have a problem? Sarah snapped at Sam. You can't be talking about a second wife in front of his legal wife, right? If he cheats on her and gets divorced, he'll lose his position as CEO, Sam joked. At this, Sarah exclaimed in surprise, What? Indeed, my wife Emily is the daughter of the former president. When I was 25, he suddenly suggested, Michael, if you don't have anyone in mind, would you like to meet my daughter? I'd initially declined because I had no confidence in myself, though he insisted. However, we hit it off instantly, leading to a quick courtship and marriage. Thus, Emily is the president's daughter, making her and Sam cousins. Realizing this, Sarah turned pale, muttering, This can't be happening. What should I do? I guess you were hoping to get close to me to pay off the debts you made, right? Too bad. As I sarcastically addressed Sarah, she showed a look of shock. While investigating Lena's stalker, we discovered Sarah was the wife and got a hunch something was off with her too. Sam suggested, This smells fishy. Give me some time to look into the wife as well. The investigation revealed that Sarah had accumulated debts in the hundreds of thousands of dollars from frequenting high-end bars. Currently, the debts have been paid with her husband's money. She likely turned her attention to me for financial rescue after she divorced. Hey, debts from a high-end bar. What's that about? It's not about that now. The wife and husband started arguing in front of us. Please discuss this at home. Regarding my daughter's case, we'll consult with the professionals and contact you later. Eager to get them out of my office, I opened the door and asked them to leave. However, they just mumbled incoherently, showing no intention of leaving. If you won't leave, I'll call the police. With my firm statement, they scattered out of the room like startled spiders. Afterward, my lawyer amicably settled Lena's stalking case with the payment of moral damages. However, I made it clear that if any further stalking occurred, we go straight to the police, no questions asked. Regarding the Pendragon couple, I heard they ended up divorcing. As for Mr. Pendragon, having been fired, he struggled to find decent employment and now juggles several part-time jobs to pay off the living expenses and the settlement debt. Meanwhile, Sarah believed she could rely on her parents after the divorce, but once they learned of the incident, they disowned her. Continuing her high-end bar visits, her debts only grew. Now she's working in a job that leverages her looks. Considering her age, it's likely going to be difficult for Sarah to lead a decent life from now on. However, as it's the result of her own actions, I do hope she manages to persevere. As for me, I continue to dedicate myself to work as usual. Lena, who had been afraid to go outside, has finally regained her spirits and started attending university with enthusiasm. She also began working part-time at a new store, and it seems she's found her calling. One day, she suddenly declared, "After I graduate from university, I'm going to work at Dad's company." I've never felt so motivated and fulfilled by a job before. The idea of working with my daughter is delightful, but there are still 2 years until she graduates. If Lena still feels the same way, then I think it would be wonderful to work together.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.